Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about episode 2 of A Murder at the End of the World. The episode is called The Silver Doll, so full spoiler from the start of this review, and I was really into episode 1, so excited to get to this one. And this is another strong episode, very engrossing, I'd say, all the way through. Once again, even though it was over an hour long, like the first one, I would say it was quite a comfortable watch. Like, I didn't feel the length, so the pacing is definitely working. And generally speaking, I'm engrossed in the lead character and the scenarios and kind of what's being set up for the remainder of the series, so that's all good. Probably it's not as good as the first episode, maybe just because I think that was a bit more stylish and it really captured the mood of what the show was going for, and it probably impressed me a lot, episode 1, because it did such a good job of just kind of hooking me pretty early on and making me invested in the world of the show, whereas this one may be following on. It's a good episode, but maybe not quite as good. And I think when I'm talking about it, I guess I'll split it into 2 sections, because this one is quite flashback heavy, and we do get a lot of backstory about Darby in the flashbacks, and we get a good picture of why she decided to become a sleuth, an amateur sleuth if you like, and why she got this passion. And you definitely see some seeds that are planted that we're then going to see with her in the future. And the episode does a good job of tying the past and the present together. Like, they will show something in the past and then pay that off in the present with something. So like the stuff, for example, with the Morse code and the lights, the street lights, for example, which she then uses in the present. So I think because a lot of it is focused on that stuff, it probably means like the main stuff in the present does take a little bit of a backseat, but I wouldn't say that stuff was like weaker in a sense. I'd just say maybe the more important stuff was the flashback, because it's just giving us a bigger picture of this character and what she's been through, and maybe why she is like she is in the present. And there's definitely some links. I would probably say the stuff in the present is still very solid and has me intrigued about what exactly is going on. Are they trying to cover something up? If so, why are they covering it up? What's their true motivations? I probably think there's one weak moment in the present stuff, and that's just like a speech which the Clive Owen Andy character says at one point, because in the fallout from Bill's death, there's talk of like shutting this retreat down and like everybody going off home, and it's like up to Andy and also Lee convinces them as well. They both together like convinces them to all stay, because they're almost painting a very positive picture where it's like, well, Bill wouldn't want us to go home. Andy says, I spent 2 years getting you all together, and it would all be for nothing if we just turn around and pack up now. And Lee also has this line about it's a sense of community. I mean, what better way to deal with such a terrible event than through a sense of community, and that's what we have here. But Andy does give like this one speech which is like, he uses the line about something to do with like there's death all around us, like the kind of death that Bill has. It's all around us in the world, and I can't remember the exact what he says, what word for word, but he's definitely hinting at like real world stuff, like the pandemic and things like that, and how because he describes how there's so many more ways of people dying nowadays, and that was just a slight weaker moment because it just felt a bit too much like a television like writing moment. Like, it just felt too much like something which was written for TV rather than something which felt more natural, and it didn't really distract you in that way. And I guess it just felt a bit too on the nose of, okay, we're bringing in stuff like the pandemic and we're having this sort of slightly preachy style moments, but that's like one small weaker moment out of the whole episode, so that's pretty good going. But I'll start with the flashback stuff with Darby, because the first bit of the flashback we see is her being taken to her first crime scene by her father, who we found out in the first episode is like a coroner, and we see that she immediately gets interested in this stuff. And there's a line from someone else at the scene about, really, you take your daughter to this? And we just, it's again linked to this murder which we saw Darby and Bill investigating in the first episode, and we immediately see, because like they find a victim's like bones like buried in the soil, so she immediately becomes interested in this and like having ideas and analysing it. But what these scenes show is then Darby immediately has good instincts and is like questioning stuff from the go, and is very like cynical. And we see also then the guy who's on the scene is in comparison kind of clueless. But the reason for the title of the episode, which is also the title of Darby's book, is because they conclude then like this woman has been killed by the same killer, because, or than it is the person they think it is based on like her earrings. And it's a very young girl, so Darby is suspicious of this because she just, as she says at one point, she doesn't feel a girl that young would be wearing those kinds of earrings. And what this leads to is her investigating like similar things on the internet, and she comes across someone online who's like interested in like cold cases and like has these sort of fringe online investigations, and they start messaging back and forth, and Darby explains why she thinks there's something not quite right about this. And it turns out the other guy, the guy online, is Bill, and that's how they met. So this is their first meeting in this episode, and they start having regular contact on Skype, and they both keep or Darby especially keeps investigating, and she finds a connection with this woman in another state, and she contacts Bill. And it's funny because it's like 3 a.m, because he makes a point of saying, yeah, it's 3 a.m, and it shows how committed she is. But then he pipes up when she says what she's found, and he's like, well, we've got to go and see this woman, we've got to talk to her. And that's when Darby gets like nervous and kind of makes an excuse to end the call and just says, I'll be in contact with you. And I like this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's good because it shows how young and vulnerable and also inexperienced Darby is. So I think this episode does a good job of showing that maybe Bill is more world savvy, like more experience in the world, and has just a bit more confidence when it comes to this stuff. Like, this is sort of Darby's first foray into this stuff, so it makes sense. And she is more nervous, and how, because I said in episode 1 how it does a good job of showing how she is very tech savvy and how for someone with her lack of confidence or her social anxieties, then it actually fits so well, like technology and doing everything online around her lifestyle. But at the same time, I think at this stage, very early on, maybe she's still finding her way in that stuff, and there's probably a little bit of a barrier, which happens naturally because it's one thing to talk to a stranger online and have interactions and like get to know each other a little bit, but it's always very different like meeting them in person. So I think that's a big part of why she backs away from this at the time, because she doesn't feel like she's ready to meet Bill in the flesh, because it's always different meeting someone for the first time. So she does back away, and like he pursues her a little bit, and I think we sort of see how Bill can be quite charming and quite persuasive, because the way he gets her on side more is then he does this trick with like the streetlights, as I was saying earlier. Like he tells Darby to go to a location, and then when he's there, like the streetlights start flashing, and it turns out it's him using Morse code, and it's her birthday, as it turns out. So it's like happy birthday Darby, and that's the message, and she's really impressed by this, and we just see that that's a bit of an icebreaker where she feels she's enamoured a bit more by him, and she feels like she can maybe trust him, and maybe it's a bit of a naive thing where she's just taken aback because she's impressed by this skill and moment so much. But I guess she also thinks it's a very sweet like gesture as well, so there's that to it as well. But that's obviously a big moment, and it's also a nice link into the present stuff, because she then uses that in the present. She uses it as a way to hack in to the system in the present, where she's trying to get like the footage from the night that Bill got killed. So that's a good example of like linking things up, and the flashback doing a good job. And the very end of the episode is literally Darby and Bill's first meeting in a bar, so they literally are in person for the first time. So the flashback stuff I think is really good in this episode, and definitely serves a purpose. And it definitely, I think you could read it as there's some stuff which is going to be important when we find out what exactly happened to Bill. And like it definitely, there's enough doubt over certain things where it makes you think, is he taking her for a ride? Like, is he more dangerous than he lets on? We don't quite know all of his backstory and like why he was meeting up with Lee. Like, so there's definitely a lot of doubt about that, and I think the actor playing Bill does a great job of, on the one hand, being very like intimidating and like he could be more sinister, but also then he does have a charisma about him, he does have a charm, and you certainly feel the chemistry between him and Darby. So the stuff in the present, Bill obviously dies, like they try to revive him but they can't, and Darby is basically quite aggressively forced out of the room, and they're kind of told this is a private matter, and that does seem overly aggressive, and just the term "this is a private matter" makes you think, well, they're desperate to cover something up. But then like one of them, I can't remember which one it is, but it might have been Lee actually, I'm not sure, but one of them takes her aside and takes her to her room and is like more gentle with her in like calming her down and talking to her, and sort of gives her a pill to help her sleep, and so that's a little bit of a more subtle approach, but just the aggression she was like shot out of that room definitely implies there could be something. And the next morning when Andy announces it to the others, the ones who don't know, or apparently don't know, he actually says it was a suicide. He claims it was a suicide, and this immediately gets Darby's attention, and that's when they have the whole conversation about leaving, and Darby's definitely in favour of leaving, but they're talked around by Andy and by Lee, and it's another good scene because Lee, you can tell, is really in shock. Acting in that scene, I think, from Brit Marling. Next, big scene is it's quite comedic because Darby tricks the guy on reception into going up to her room, up the toilet with some mess tissue paper, and she convinces him that there's mess in my toilet, it's really bad and it's blocked up, and at one point, just for added effect, she slams her boot, like a wet boot, up on the counter as a distraction so that she can get the room key for Bill's room. Good stuff in this part of the episode because you do see how Darby uses her investigation skills, but also how in a more tech-savvy world have to use methods outside of the box or a little bit different. And she uses her AI assistant, I think Ray's his name. So that's been a good add-on to this stuff. Injection is in his right arm, and she asks the AI Ray is it normal for someone who's right-handed to inject themselves into the right arm? And he gives a percentage on how often that happens, and it's a very low percentage. So she also gets him to describe different other ways that they could have injected themselves. One is in your foot, a few other ways. So she's convinced based on this, then yeah, he can't have killed himself, someone had to have killed him. The door opens and it's Lee. Lee comes in and she starts searching around the body itself and is having a good rummage through, and it's only because there's a noise and someone outside then she panics and leaves the room quite sharply, but she's having a good look around. Presentation going on from the filmmaker. Bobby says to Lee, then someone set this up, he didn't kill himself, and she starts saying this and is a little bit vague on how she knows this, she doesn't want to let too much on, but she also asks Lee why you were in his room, why you were looking around his body, and Lee is very vague on that as well, doesn't really give her a proper answer. But there's a good moment at the end of this where Lee gives her an idea of how to proceed, and it's then because she mentions her book and she says the favourite part of that book, the chapter where you hacked into a security system. So that's when she gives her the idea, but she says, do it very carefully, make sure you're not caught. And so it's a little bit of a moment of this character of Lee believing in Darby and giving her a little idea, but telling her, be very discreet about it, don't draw too much suspicion. He gets the idea from the past involving the streetlights and the Morse code, and it all links to her linking into the system, and she gets access to the footage of that night. It's like a camera outside the room. I'm not sure, maybe there isn't a camera in the actual room, but she gets footage of the hallway. And she sees one of the other guests, David, I think his name was. That actor I've seen in a few things, but he's in the hallway and he's talking to Bill, and he hands Bill something. I'm not sure. I don't think we saw what it was, but he hands him something. I mean, if you're going along with this idea of he killed himself with drugs, he could have handed him drugs, but that probably seems a bit straightforward. And he then leaves, and then Salma, one of the others, comes along, and she's there as well. She looks into the camera, and then you get like a horror type jump scene because suddenly a figure with a mask on appears in front of the camera, and it gives Darby like a right fright. But this person could be the one who killed Bill, and Darby then sees the body being taken away by the authorities because Andy says earlier then we're calling the authority, this will all be taken care of. This presentation by filmmaker, and it turns out he's working with the AI operating system, and his whole new film is like AI based, and there's a thing about how he gets the AI system to rewrite the first few lines of the latest Harry Potter novel, but in the language of Ernest Hemingway, showing off just how advanced AI is now, and like just how much it can do and how scary it is, because it's again getting into these areas where it could and writers sort of irrelevant with all this power and just how much it can do. So that's a good scene of like getting more into that stuff once again. And I also like the correction and the Clive Owen character makes when I think it's the Joan Chan character, like she mentions like, oh yeah, talk about artificial intelligence, and he corrects and says, well, we prefer the term alternative intelligence, and that's a line he said in the first episode as well. So I do like that, like this idea of this guy putting a more positive spin on this to technology and forward-thinking technology. He does seem to be very much on the side of it. So that was an interesting exchange, like him just correcting her. It makes you wonder if the answer to this, what exactly is going on here, is going to have something to do with AI, because that makes a lot of sense, like the way these things are being set up. It would make sense if something is going on with the AI when it comes to Bill's death. It's even crossed my mind that Darby could be an AI. Like that's something which I've considered. Her book maybe, because they're getting into these examples where you could just have an AI write a book, cut out the middleman, cut out the actual person and writer. So I wonder if she's like an actual AI, and with Lee involved in this company and with her husband and all that, then that could be like a whole thing where that's why she's such a big fan of Darby, maybe. Now how that ties into Bill's death, I'm not quite sure. Her being an AI, I think, is a possibility. I'm not sure how I would feel about it, but it depends on execution. But it's definitely something which has crossed my mind. So yeah, another good episode. Not quite as strong as episode 1, but still very good, like I said. So that's Murder at the End of the World episode 2. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out, and you can support me for as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/borednow, and I'll be back with episode 3 of this soon. Thanks for listening, guys. Goodbye.